Sometimes the best way to solve your own problems is to help someone else. Hey all, and welcome back to the Enneagram and Writing. Today we're going to dig into the wonderful Enneagram Type 2s, or the helpers. If you're unfamiliar with the Enneagram, you can check out my breakdown over here, and you can also go check out my videos on the Type 1, because I think it turned out very well. But now we are going to talk about Type 2. And this type is probably among the warmest and kindest type you'll ever meet. I included the family puppy Mochi in the thumbnail because 2s just have that very same effect on people. Being with a 2 is like walking into a kitchen and smelling warm apple pie fresh out of the oven. They're empathetic, they're attentive, and they're always putting the needs of others above their own. And it's very common for people to mistype themselves as 2, especially people who do ministry or humanitarian work. But for this number, it isn't so much the act of serving as it is that posture of servanthood. 2s don't just do service, they live it. And I think part of what drives this is their inner belief that before they can have their own needs met, they need to meet the needs of others first. And this can oftentimes lead to a lot of silent suffering for the Type 2s, but we'll talk more about that later. In numerical order around the Enneagram, 2s are the first number in the heart triad. And the core emotion of this triad is shame. And it's often the most prevalent struggle in these people's growth journey. The most natural way for the 2 to deal with that shame is to externalize it. Because their nagging doubt and their desire to be worth something to someone, 2s often try to make themselves indispensable. And this interaction with others is what 2s use to self-define. They become very others-focused, and they learn how to serve well. And this right here is a twofold blade. Twofold. Because on one hand, it can lead to manipulative behaviors and unhealthy relationship. But on the other, it uniquely equips them to be gentle and loving with the needs and emotions of others. Because of their own intimate understanding of need, they have this like radar sense that lets them hone in on exactly what the people around them are struggling with and how to help them with it. And so when 2s are healthy, there's a massive strength and beauty in what they can do with that. As for personal experience, I once thought I had a lot of experience with Type 2s. But eventually, every single 2 that I knew realized that they had mistyped themselves. And I think a large part of that had to do with the type of people I was with, growing up working in ministry. But I think there's more to it than that. To me, this points to who we see 2s as. I think that from the outside, 2s are the people we all want to be. Not only are they warm and loving, but they make people feel warm and loved. And that's a very unique skill. They're magnetic and thoughtful, but they're also the kind of people who have everything you need in their bag, whether it's snacks, hugs, a good book, or a shoulder to cry on. 2s are always like right there waiting, and it's really wonderful. However, as I've gotten to know the 2s in my life, I've started to realize that the energy that goes into that image that they project. 2s try really hard to be everything for everyone because the way that we think of them is so intimately tied to how they think about themselves. And that image is so important to them because being needed is kind of their shortcut to feeling valued. And that's kind of the heart of the Enneagram. It's our 9 different flawed strategies of reconnecting with love. But I think that's especially beautiful in the case of the Type 2 to watch them learn how loved they are, even at their worst. Because these people are some of the most caring people you'll ever find. And that joy when they know how they're cared for is it's like nothing you'll ever see. Wounds and motivation. If you're a 2, buckle your seatbelt because we're about to go straight for the deep stuff. And it might be rough for a second, but I promise you, it gets better. We make a turn there. So just bear with me. As children, 2s perceived this rejection from the protective caregiver in their life. And they took up the lie that in order to reconnect with that protective love, they had to take on nurturing responsibility to be worthy of that again. And so in order to win back that affection, that love, they learn to become even more loving themselves. And I'm going to reiterate what I said in the type 1 video. If you're a parent or a caregiver for a type 2, or if you're a type 2 yourself, this is not an accusation or an attempt to put more guilt into your life. That's the last thing I want to do. And it's honestly counter to everything the Enneagram is about. Because more often than not, these childhood wounds, especially for the type 2s, are perceived wounds. As parents and caregivers, we aren't able to love perfectly. And even as children, we aren't able to receive love perfectly. That's okay, I believe. It's what grace and forgiveness are for. But in the lie of that perceived or real wound, the 2s learn to push away their own needs and replace them with the needs of others. Sleeping at Last kind of wrote from that voice and said, "You know I'll take my heart clean apart if it helps yours beat." And this mentality created a cycle of hiding their needs and attending to others until the other people that they were helping were all that mattered. But then that created a disparity and an ache inside them because they're still human. And this cycle really pressed a fear into the 2's head, the fear that if they let their needs show, they'll be left. And that's what drives the 2 when they're unhealthy. That fear that their own needs will break the image of the perfect helper and leave them stranded and alone. However, denying those needs doesn't make them go away. And when those needs come back around, the 2 can often find themselves expressing them through manipulation. They'll try to have their own needs met by first being loving and caring, and so that hoping that somehow in giving, that will be reciprocated and that they will get their needs met by meeting the needs of others. And codependency is a really easy trap for 2s to fall into. Since 2s are so in tune with the emotions and needs of others, they can often assume that the others around them can do the same thing. Unfortunately, most of us can't, and this often leads to hurt and resentment in the 2's life. When they're unhealthy, these 2s tend to gravitate to the negative behaviors of the type 8, like becoming controlling and emotionally walled off. And this usually ends with the 2 expressing their pent-up frustration at the universe in general for not noticing all the hard work they've been doing. And that's what hurts the most when they're in this negative headspace, not being appreciated. Because all this manipulation and selfish giving is really rooted in the fear that they'll be rejected if they reveal their messy true self. In Sleeping at Last Song 2, he writes from that same voice again, "I just want to love you, to love you, to love you well. I just want to learn how, somehow, to be loved myself." And that's where that pathway to transformation comes in, the eucatastrophe, if I may. And if you're a 2, this is what I hope you hear. If you only take one thing out of this video, we want you. Not for what you do for us, or not because of the cheerful, selfless helper you try to be, but for the messy, wonderful, completely and utterly worthy you. It's all right to acknowledge your needs and hurts to others because you love best when you let others love you too. It's so easy to need to be needed. But what I sincerely hope is that you'll know that the people who love you will want you even when they don't need you. That you, the real you, are worthy of love, even when you come to the table with empty hands. And for the 2, letting that guard down and admitting their own needs helps them love others fully. Instead of veiled frustration and manipulation, 2s just radiate genuine selflessness. And believe me when I tell you, there's nothing quite like a mature 2 setting their sights on you. Because they have that incredible emotional radar that lets them zero in on everyone's needs and mental states. But they have the wisdom and the confidence to give without strings, to cut out the glamour and the lights and just give. Not only do healthy 2s give, but they also create. 2s are space makers. They have this supernatural ability to alter a room, to brighten it with a smile, or to make a safe, intimate space for the wounds and the fears of the people around them. And in security, these numbers integrate to type 4, becoming more authentic, willing to express themselves without fear of rejection, which lends itself to that space-making skill. I find that they're also able to accept their own needs and are able to set boundaries with others and help prevent themselves from falling into bitterness or overwork. But most of all, twos are truly loving when they're living in the knowledge that they are loved and that love just overflows from them like gentle streams or tidal waves, nourishing and nurturing everything around them into growth and life. Thank you all so much for being here. If you're a type 2, I really hope this was honoring and uplifting to you. And if you're close with one, I hope this helped you understand them a little better, you know? If you're interested in helping the channel out, I'm sorry. I'd love it if you could share this video with your type 2 friends, and also like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Check out the next video in the series to learn how to write twos effectively.